Hello and welcome back to Finding Myself at 30, the neurodivergent podcast where Corinne, I can't even say that, but oh my God, my words ain't even come out, where I am finding myself at 30, basically. Oh my gosh. Do I keep that intro in? Yeah, let's just go for it. Let's roll with it, guys. Let's roll. So thank you so much for listening to the last episode. I really hope you enjoyed it. It was a really interesting topic of conversation talking about my journey. And I think I've gone in a little bit about how it's impacted me and how it kind of came about and stuff with my own children. So this week I want to talk about special interests because I do often talk about how I have special interests and share my views on this and videos and stuff on social media. And I often get people ask me, what's the difference between special interest and actually just having a hobby and, something that is enjoyable to you. I think the biggest difference is that special interests are intense, and any other neurodivergent people out there listening in will know that we will hyper focus very much so on the things we love and the things we're interested in, no matter what it is. We will collect, we will research, we will obsess, we will get that intense feeling. I'll get onto the feeling shortly, because it's very hard to put into words how it feels when you talk and embrace things that you're really interested in as a neurodivergent adult. But it's a great feeling, and it gives me that dopamine that I am lacking because I'm ADHD. So let's talk about my special interests. I have a few, and we'll go through them. I think a lot of people, when you say you've got a special interest, will assume it's cars and trains and things that, in the 1980s, they would say are special interests for mainly boys. That's not me saying there are girls out there that like trains, because there are. But I think there is still a outdated view on what really is an interest. Now, special interest can be absolutely anything. Absolutely anything. And for me, I have a few. One is autism, which is quite... I laugh because I am autistic, so for autism to be a special interest is quite bizarre, but I do like researching and finding out and engaging more information on that. The way I do that is I'll Google, I will talk to people, and when I feel that we're having a conversation that is based around things that I'm interested in, like talking about autism and the journey to autism, I get really excited and my voice changes. Another thing that I have a special interest in is one of my favorites, which is antiques and vintage. Now, it varies. Me and my partner, Luke, we collect very old books. And there are there's two different sides to that. We collect Victorian books and early 1900 books, which are my favorite. But we also collect old children's books, like from the 80s, the 70s. I know, guys, I'm sorry I'm saying 80s is old, but for the kids these days, they say the 80s is vintage, so it is like we move. And we collect like books and storybooks from them eras. We've got a whole bookshelf covered full with vintage books, and I every so often will go through each of them. And I'll describe to you right now how it feels when I read a book from 1901 or from the late 1800s, especially if it's got a inscription inside, a message inside from a family member. Or, for example, like one of my books has it was presented as an award to a young boy at one of the local schools around here. So it's got an award certificate printed at the front, and it's all signed from 1906. Now, my brain, so neurotypical people, so people that aren't autistic, will look at that if they're interested in history books and, antiques. They'll read it, they'll look at it and they'll be like, oh, that's really cool. It's from 1901. How amazing, how lovely. you know, this was written for a child. It's crazy. My brain then thinks about how and who has held this book, who that boy is, and whether his family is still around in Grimsby now. I also think about the fact that this book that's in my hand is from them old times. Like, how can I be holding something that is so precious and so old and older than 100 years? It's just, yeah. And that's the way my brain runs. I love the smell of old books. It's a very much so sensory aspect to me. I love the way they're worded. I love the print. I like looking at where they were made, the printers. Like, I'm really intense with it. So this is where it's different. Like, I look at every aspect of it. I don't just look at the book and think, oh my God, it's old, it's amazing. I look at every little aspect around it. And I think that's what is the biggest difference between special interest and what is an interest, is the details and the hyper focus on it. Because I love just the character. It's like, I feel like when I hold an old book and it's got a message in, or it's really old, I just think about the character and all the probably the hundreds of people that have held it, and what were they doing back then in the Victorian times? What were they doing, like, with their parents? Like, was it a gift? You know, what school do they go to? How, like, that's what my brain does, and that is the difference. I literally spoke about that for so long then. Yeah, okay. One of my other special interests, and it is very similar to the books, is I love old buildings. And like the old books, I will hyper focus on the people that were here in these old buildings before now. I love like treasure hunting and antiques and like digging and archaeology. And when I was younger, I wanted to be an archaeologist. I remember being asked it in primary school, and I was too embarrassed to say, mainly because every other girl wanted to be a beautician when they were older, and I just followed the crowd. When actually deep inside, I always wanted to be an archaeologist, and I'm still obsessed with that now. I'm literally running away in my mouth. I was meant to be talking about old buildings, but then now I'm talking about archaeology. So old buildings, I love old buildings, and Luke shares that special interest with me too, to the point where we go to museums to look at, you know, old buildings. And I like woodwork, and I like bricks, and I like knowing that people lived in this building in an old time. That fascinates me. I like knowing that behind this door, this could have happened. And this is, and again, like the difference between an interest and special interest, I am hyper focusing on things that are really detailed, specific. Like, I imagine their hands touching this big, say we go, okay, for example, say when we go London in a couple of weeks, which I'm so excited about, we go to one of the buildings, maybe say we go to Tower Hill, which would be absolutely great because I love the Tudors, but that's the whole other one. Like, say we go there and we're walking across the wall and you see a big iron gate, which is an original from the Tudor time. If I touch the iron gate or I'm around that, I get really mesmerized by the fact that people have been there before and have touched it and felt it. That is how I process what goes on. I like the way things are made. I like architecture as well as archaeology. So the way buildings are made, I like medieval. I like, what's the other one? There's like different types of architecture. And I also Google a lot of archaeology spots. I'm like letting out all my interest there. I'm a little bit embarrassed, but it is what it is. I also, you know, will Google things. I will search. So if we go to somewhere and we can see a really old building, I will search what's been there before. I live in Grimsby, and I have searched this area, and I know what buildings are older than others, and I know what was here before now, and it just fascinates me. And that's kind of the same really with the books. I just love things that were here before now and how, you know, people lived. Another quick thing about that, in our hallway, the wallpaper's peeled back, which one of the kids ripped like a couple of years ago. But what it's peeled back to show is the original wallpaper from this house is from like the 1910s ish. And there is some Edwardian paper beneath that, and it's still there. I still look at it every now and then, and I still think about the people that were in this house before us. Again, very specific, probably a little bit, people would say it's a bit geeky, but it's not, because it's my interest and it's the way I think about it and feel about it. There's an intense feeling you get with special interest, like you feel that rush, and it is, like I said before, that dopamine chasing we get from our special interests. So they kind of go hand to hand with each other. Another one of my special interests is clothes. That feeling when I buy a new outfit and I've got it in my head and I know what it's going to look like on, and I feel great in it. And special interest in clothing is always a fun one, because I get to try it on, I get to plan when I'm going to wear it and why I'm going to wear it, and I love things like that. I do try and find, like this print here I love because it's got like carpety print, and it gives me like vintage vibes, so I like trying to get things that give me that vibe as well. But yeah, so clothing, dopamine dress is important. I will speak about dopamine in another video, because again, that is a really important topic of conversation. But yeah, I would say that's my main special interest. I've got other special interests, but they all are around history and historical places and buildings and things like that. So yeah, I think I'm going to end this here. I don't know if it's going to be a quick one or not, and I'm so sorry that I'm talking to you quite casually. I feel like I haven't done this very professionally, but actually for me, part of this podcast is being myself authentically. So if it does come across rushed or does come across a bit gobbledygook, then we both know that I am neurodivergent, and it is what it is. It's who I am. So I'm not going to change that for nobody. Thank you again if you've listened. I'd love to know what your special interests are and how you feel about them and that intense feeling. Let me know in the comments if you're watching online, or like send me a message, let me know. And thank you so much for listening in, and hopefully you'll be back for the next episode. Bye.